In 1973, Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated that eyewitness memory could be systematically altered by changing a single word in a question. Participants who were asked how fast cars were smashed into each other reported significantly higher speeds than those asked how they hit. No new information was introduced, only language framing shifted recall itself. One of the most consistent findings in cognitive psychology is that memory confidence does not correlate with memory accuracy. Subjects often express absolute certainty about events that later prove to be partially or entirely reconstructed. This is not considered a flaw in memory. It is considered its operating principle. If remembering something changes it, what exactly are you accessing when you say, "I remember"? This video operates within a central concept in cognitive psychology, reconstructive memory. The idea that memory is not stored like a recording, but rebuilt each time it is accessed. The brain does not retrieve past events, it reconstructs them using fragments: emotion, semantic meaning, social expectation, and present context. This framework is strongly supported by research in cognitive bias and schema theory, particularly in the work of Daniel Kahneman on System 1 and System 2 processing. System 1 fills gaps rapidly, prioritizing coherence over accuracy. By the end of this analysis, you will recognize that memory is not a static archive. It is a dynamic reconstruction system that updates the past every time you access it. And more importantly, you will begin to see how easily that system is influenced without your awareness. When individuals experience an event, they assume it is stored as a complete, continuous record. In reality, the brain encodes fragments, sensory impressions, emotional intensity, and semantic labels rather than full scenes. Later recall attempts to reassemble those fragments into a coherent narrative. Coherence is not evidence of accuracy, it is evidence of successful reconstruction. In real-world observation, this is visible in how two people can witness the same event and produce entirely different narratives, each internally consistent. Detection tool. When comparing memories between individuals, look not for agreement in detail, but for similarity in structure. Structural similarity is far rarer than factual overlap. This fragmentation sets the stage for something more unstable, the role of suggestion. In a landmark experiment by Elizabeth Loftus on eyewitness memory, participants were shown footage of a traffic accident. When later asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed versus hit, estimated speeds changed significantly based solely on wording. No new information was added, only the framing changed, yet memory adjusted itself to match language. Memory does not resist suggestion, it absorbs it and reorganizes itself around it. Detection tool. Pay attention to certainty expressed after repeated recall. The more often a memory is narrated, the more stable it feels, even as it becomes more distorted. This leads to a critical realization. Repetition does not preserve memory, it edits it, and that editing becomes more aggressive over time. Emotion is not stored as part of memory, it is reattached during recall. This means current emotional state influences how past events are interpreted. A neutral past event recalled during stress becomes negative. The same event recalled during calm becomes neutral or even positive. This is known as state-dependent reconstruction. You are not recalling the past, you are translating it through your current nervous system. Detection tool. Notice how your interpretation of old events changes during different emotional states. Stability of meaning is often mistaken for stability of memory. This layer introduces a subtle instability. Identity itself becomes time-dependent, which leads to a deeper distortion mechanism. Memories are not only reconstructed internally, they are reconstructed socially. Every time a person tells a story, they adjust it based on listener reaction. Approval strengthens certain details, confusion removes others. Emotional engagement reshapes emphasis. Over time, the socially reinforced version becomes the official memory. Shared memory is not shared truth, it is shared reinforcement. Detection tool. Listen for stories that feel overly structured, polished, or emotionally optimized. These often indicate multiple rounds of social editing. This explains why groups can collectively remember events that did not occur in the same way, or sometimes did not occur at all in that form. But there is a deeper issue still. But here is where it becomes more complex. Even false memories can produce the same emotional and physiological responses as real ones. The brain does not differentiate strongly between events that were experienced and events that were vividly reconstructed. This is because emotional systems respond to meaning, not historical accuracy. In other words, if a memory feels real enough during recall, the body treats it as real experience. This is where confidence becomes dangerously misleading. High confidence is not proof of truth, it is proof of internal consistency. And internal consistency can be built on false foundations. Over time, reconstructed memories begin to stabilize into identity structures. People do not just remember events, they organize themselves around them. I am the kind of person who becomes anchored in selectively reconstructed past experiences. Contradictory memories are often suppressed or reinterpreted to preserve identity continuity. Identity is the story memory repeatedly agrees to tell about itself. Detection tool. Listen for rigid self-descriptions tied to past events. The more absolute the identity claim, the more likely it depends on selective reconstruction. At this point, memory is no longer about the past. It becomes about maintaining coherence of the self in the present, which leads to the final implication. If memory continuously reconstructs reality, then there is no fixed internal archive of your life. There is only a constantly updated model shaped by emotion, language, and social reinforcement. This means two people can truthfully remember the same event in incompatible ways, not because one is lying, but because both are reconstructing. And if this mechanism operates universally, then the boundary between truth and experience becomes less stable than most people assume. You are not carrying a perfect record of your past, you are carrying the latest version your mind has assembled, and it will continue to revise it without asking for permission. Now that the mechanism is clear, its applications become practical and immediate. First, treat repeated narratives as edited artifacts. The more often a memory is retold, the more carefully it should be evaluated for drift rather than assumed accuracy. Second, separate emotional intensity from factual reliability. Strong feeling does not validate accuracy. It often indicates reconstruction strength. Third, compare versions across time, not confidence levels. Stability of detail over multiple recalls is a stronger indicator than certainty in a single moment. Memory is not a witness. It is a participant in its own rewriting. Final principle: the past you recall is not the past that happened. It is the past your mind has successfully reconstructed to make sense of who you are now. Next analysis moves deeper into how language itself shapes this reconstruction process before memory even begins to form.